Hello everyone, welcome to our presentation. The purpose of this video is supposed to help you think more wisely before making decisions relating to astrology. First of all, we would like to show you a very short video clip.
Hello, fabulous friends and fans. Welcome to Synchronicity. I am your host, Nadia Shaw, and this is your moment of synchronicity. I am here with Alex Trenoweth. Now, I'm just so excited about this because Alex has written this amazing book called Growing Pains. And what this book is about astrological transits and understanding astrology of childhood and adolescence. And I think that this is so important, as I was telling Alex before we started recording, was that I do think that a big part of the healing energy that astrology brings is through awareness. And a lot of that awareness comes from understanding your own life and your childhood that much better. But also this book is really great for parents to understand their children and to be better parents to their children as well, which I think makes it a really important work. And so I'm so grateful for you to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
The video you just saw was of Alex Trenoweth, the author of Growing Pains, Mirror Mirror, Zeus on the Loose, and The Wolf You Feed. Not only was she voted the best international astrologer in 2015 for her research and education in astrology, but she composes horoscopes for one of the biggest astrological social media companies, Cosmic Intelligence Agency. Alex became a teacher to fund her astrology studies and went as far as to sneak astrology into her students' curriculum, despite being threatened to be dismissed for gross misconduct if she did not keep her profession private from the school. Now she is one of many published astrology authors with a ranking of 12,580 in astrology on Amazon. This shows just how many people are invested in astrology. Technically, by definition, what is astrology? Astrology is defined as the notion how motions of celestial planets can forecast human affairs and terrestrial events, and it was an ancient practice that was used around 2,000 years ago to stable agricultural development. During the Common Era and Middle Ages, doctors performed surgeries according to signs in the sky out of fear their patients would bleed out if performed on another day. Planets and zodiac signs were assigned different areas of the body. Plants and medicinal herbs were also picked when their planets were visible. It was also believed that the bubonic plague was the result of a destructive combination of Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars. Even in the 21st century, some practitioners believed they could predict future illnesses and determine the best time to perform a surgery. According to the American Federation of Astrologers, there are 70 million Americans read their horoscopes daily. In 2009, according to an online poll, out of all their horoscope readers, 33% of them check their horoscope before job interview, 35% check their horoscope before starting a new relationship, and 34% before buying a lottery ticket. The rise of new generation of social media software has enhanced the dissemination of astrology. There are more than 200 astrology apps in the App Store. The top 10 astrology apps has grew their revenues by 64.7% since 2016 to 2019 and reached almost $40 million. While websites and apps are growing to fill the astrology space, even traditional astrologers are benefiting from this. Traditional astrologers can make between $60,000 and $80,000 through consulting each year, and in fact, I did contributed to that astrology industry because one time I paid $50 to an astrology consultant asking if I would get into the college I wanted. And he asked for my birth dates, names, and let me pick numbers out of a random list. In the end, he told me that there's a very small chance for me to get into the high-ranked college I wanted, but I will definitely get into the safety schools that are on my list.
What Yingni just described is an example of the Barnum effect, which is when vague statements that are meant to apply to anyone seem like they're made for the individual who is receiving them. In her case, the astrologer told her that getting into safety schools would be more likely than getting into more competitive schools, which is a basic fact that most of us learn as we go through the college application process. This tactic is often used in horoscopes or by astrologers in order to make people believe that they are receiving credible information. An astrologer might present an individual a vague statement like this one about having money concerns, since it can be discerned by any questions the individual might ask during their reading session.
Another logical reasoning fallacy seen in astrology would be confirmation bias, which is a tendency to seek out information that supports one's own beliefs and disregard information that doesn't. This kind of wishful thinking allows horoscopes to thrive. For example, a person's daily horoscope may read, "Today your finances will increase." Although it might be common for them to find spare change on the ground in public, confirmation bias leads a person to accept this as being in line with their reading, completely confirming their belief. Similar to the example seen in the picture displayed, people tend to strictly focus on what they already know.
Another logical reasoning trap that most astrology believers fall into is the fundamental attribution error. This most commonly occurs when believers ignore a person's environment and current situation in favor of pointing to a person's personality traits, prescribed by their star sign, as the reason behind their behavior. For example, an astrology believer might say that a person is acting sad and crying because they are a Pisces, all while ignoring that they are currently going through a tough breakup. In this example, the person is actually in tears because their breakup saddens them, but the astrology believer rushes to pin their behavior on being a Pisces, which is the sign known for being the most emotional, a personality trait they automatically assign to all Pisces. Through the fundamental attribution error, people's beliefs blind them from analyzing a person's behavior and getting to the true root.
Often, beliefs in astrology are passed down by cultural or social influence. Astrology is most prevalent in India with Vedic astrology, which relies on analyzing a person's birth chart based on their time and date of birth to understand their behaviors and compatibility with others. In China, the Chinese zodiac rotates between every 12 years and assigns an animal to each group of birth years. These eventually influenced Western astrology, which relies on the 12 zodiac signs that are assigned to a range of specific birth dates. More recently, social influence has encouraged people to connect over astrology apps like CoStar and The Pattern to show them how compatible they are with friends or potential love interests. Here I have a screenshot of my CoStar, which shows a breakdown of my compatibility with my friend. Astrology is also becoming more prevalent as a way to predict life events that are seemingly uncertain. Many people look to astrology if they are seeking a sense of control over their lives or attempting to avoid the discomfort of not knowing what the future may hold. This is referred to as an illusion of control, which is where someone might feel like they're capable of having an influence over things they encounter in their daily lives. Individuals are more susceptible to believing in astrology if they're trying to resolve any negative events they're experiencing. This is especially true of those who seek out relationship astrologers, which are astrologers who specialize in reading a couple's birth charts in order to understand whether they're compatible. People attend relationship astrologers since they are looking for someone to resolve their interpersonal conflicts for them or to predict whether they will have a successful partnership with someone. Interestingly enough, people who have pre-existing beliefs in astrology, either from cultural or social influence, might face cognitive dissonance when they are given information that does not seem to accurately describe them. For example, if they're a Leo, which is often associated with being proud, they might not personally identify as a prideful person, but yet they might still continue to believe in astrology and search for an explanation for why that specific prediction does not make sense to them.
The topic of astrology has caught the eye of the public in recent years due to its rapid increase in popularity. According to the National Science Foundation, 40% of Americans believe in astrology. Despite there being absolutely no scientific evidence to support the ideas behind it, individuals continue to use it as a source without realizing the negative impacts it can have on their lives. Starting with how it affects their true selves, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, people feel the need to live up to their individual astrological expectations, which motivates them to adjust their personality, behaviors, and decision-making to then align with each other by exaggerating stereotypical characteristics assigned to their zodiac sign. These beliefs are also being used to prejudge others. People are preconditioned to believe that certain zodiac signs are expected to act in specific ways, which leads them to become biased towards individuals, so they stay away from zodiac signs that tend to be known for having negative connotations without actually getting to know them.
People are also believing that they have no control over their own lives because they believe their fates have been pre-written. An individual's excessive belief in horoscopes will have them thinking that the quality of their daily life has already been determined, completely relying on an article that can be generalized to the public, allowing it to interfere with every aspect of their day, such as their moods and plans. Love in astrology has also become very popular in the last few years, but failed couple matching isn't discussed often. Many people rely on horoscopes and zodiac signs to determine the success or failure of their relationship. Sad reality is that a person might be rejecting others that could suit them much better simply because their signs don't align with each other according to their charts. Even when couples are compatible, there is no guarantee that the relationship will work. Therefore, personal relationships should not be based on a theory. With that being said, I think it's important to note that astrology can be truly harmful to a person's sense of self and their interpersonal relationships. It weakens their ability to look at the world logically.
Numerous studies about astrology have aimed to prove its scientific soundness, but most contain issues that fundamentally prevent the results from being scientifically valid. In their 1972 study, Gauquelin appears to find that planetary positions at different birth times influence whether or not people have successful careers in one. The independent factor here is too difficult to isolate. As such, it is too difficult to determine whether the planetary positions are truly the influencing factor that determines whether people will have successful careers. However, it may be just as likely that education begins earlier for some people depending on the month they are born, leading to higher success rates for those who start school earlier. Gauquelin does not acknowledge or work to eliminate outside factors from possibly influencing the study, a step that is usually critical in scientific research. In another study done in 1978, Mayo et al. Demonstrate the common pseudoscientific practice of faulty sampling that leads to internal threats to validity. The researchers in this study, aiming to prove that certain sun signs are more extroverted than others, obtained their sample from a group of students that had previously requested astrological predictions from one of the researchers. In other words, this particular convenience sample consisted of individuals who already possessed an interest in astrology. From the get-go, their study was vulnerable to expectancy effects, as their subjects would have likely been able to gather that the study was about astrology, and subsequently molded their answers to match their personalities to their zodiac signs. Another flaw present in this study is the lack of a control group. The researchers failed to include another group whose star signs were not known and gather their extroversion-introversion ratios. The lack of such a control group is a critical hit to the credibility of this study. The researchers did not give themselves a baseline rate of the introversion and extroversion in the general population to compare to the rate found based on astrological signs. As a result, the outcome of the study is not scientifically valid. One hypothesis critical to astrology, stemming from the belief that certain people are not romantically compatible because of the traits associated with their star signs, is that people with incompatible signs will have less successful relationships than those who are compatible. Here is how to test this and avoid issues present in current astrology research. The ideal sample would be a purposive randomized sample. One test group would consist of married couples who have been together for 10 years or more. The second test group would include divorcees whose marriages lasted less than 10 years. Researchers should obtain their samples from U.S. government marriage records. This method of subject recruiting would minimize the risk of having widespread expectancy effects within the sample, as people curious about astrology would not be targeted. The control group would consist of couples randomly selected from marriage records of people married 10 years ago, and would represent the divorce rate of the general population. As for the design, researchers would determine the star signs and general astrological compatibility rates of both test group subjects, compare them to each other as well as the control group. The control group's signs and astrological compatibility would not be determined or analyzed. Researchers would only compute the group's divorce rate. In order to support the hypothesis, the long-lasting marriage group should have more astrological compatibility than the quickly divorced group. Additionally, this compatibility should be compared to the control group's divorce rate to determine whether this compatibility is outside of chance or what the general population already reflects. Some astrology believers blindly trust astrology because they think astrology is based on scientific evidence, due to very common misconceptions of linking astrology to astronomy. This is similar to other medical pseudosciences that are purported to be based on scientific evidence, like supplements or herbal remedies. In forensics, handwriting analysis is used to examine a person's writing in order to learn about the type of person they are. This resembles the way astrology uses birth charts to map out a person's traits. Both practices falsely claim to be able to match up their criteria for human characteristics to real people without having proper evidence. Similarly, educational systems categorize people with learning styles that seems to describe their individual ways of processing information. This is similar to astrology, which assigns specific traits to individuals based on their zodiac sign. Both practices seek to make distinctions between people that are not actually present.
When a person is persuaded by their daily horoscope, it is because of the Barnum effect. One way to ease the convincing nature of this effect is to point out the general applicability of horoscopes. This can be done by presenting believers with examples of horoscopes that do not align with their signs and pointing out how they are likely still relevant to them regardless. Making believers aware of the vague nature of horoscopes may help to break their credibility. Many believers of astrology make the mistake of thinking it is the same thing as astronomy. To get rid of this misconception, it would be useful to have esteemed astronomers publicly reject astrology and make it clear that they are different. Once they do, people who only believe in astrology because they think it is part of astronomy will likely realize their mistake and rethink the supposed scientific validity of astrology.